It is Thursday. This is a 6 a.m. Coffee and Coaches Conference call. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and Dr. Mike, it is perfect. And it is so good today.
This has just been something of interest lately.
Uh-huh.
Exercise protocols for reducing blood pressure.
I don't know if there's such a thing per se, okay? But this brings up a really interesting point as to what high blood pressure really is.
Okay, let me hear what you have to say about it.
Okay. So if we think about the circulation having two sides, right? You have the output side and the input side. Okay? To make it simple. All of the fluid shifting that goes on that's associated with circulation is based on gradients. It's like, just like we talk about with range of motion and things like that when we talk about gradients of pressure and volume. So on the front side, so as the blood leaves the heart, the gradients are such that the fluid shift is away from circulation. So it's moving stuff into the cells. On the back side, the byproducts of cellular metabolism are coming back into circulation. So any ions, hydrogen ions, chloride, et cetera, increases the concentration of the blood flow coming back into the heart, okay? And then that increases the fluid volume coming back into the heart. The larger the ion concentration, the more fluid that comes back towards the heart, right? So that means I have more fluid coming back into the heart. So what the heart does is it doesn't actually create the pressure that manages the flow of blood, because blood flows all by itself, okay? What the heart does is make sure that the flow gets vortex. So the heart actually spins, it doesn't pump, it spins blood to make sure that it's a non-turbulent flow that enters and leaves the heart. So if you're deconditioned, as it were, as the people that tend to get high blood pressure are, they will produce more ions. They will have a larger volume of fluid returning to the heart that the heart has to manage. And so that's why you're going to see like higher resting heart rates with people that are deconditioned. But you'll also see higher pressures because it's a back pressure coming from the backside. So the fluid that's going back to the heart after cellular metabolism creates the resistance, if it were, okay? And so that's my spiel. And so if you become more aerobically conditioned, you don't produce the strong ion concentration that's associated with cellular metabolism like people that are deconditioned, and therefore you have a greater likelihood of lower blood pressure. Now, having said all that, I'm sure there are things that I don't understand, that I don't know, that can actually increase blood pressure. But when we're talking about the conditioning effect, that's where my head would be. Well, what's your angle? Because let's talk about it, because it might be useful.
No, I think so. I think that's actually, I've never thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When I think, so I think what's got me thinking about this lately is there was a new research paper from this study called the MESA study, which is like essentially just a modern day large population health study. Like in America, the classic one was the Framingham Heart Study, or the
really long
Health
one?
Study. Yeah, this is like a newer version of that,
okay.
essentially. And what they showed was that, this is also, I think, interesting commentary, even from a fitness perspective, is that blood pressure levels have basically been set based on unhealthy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we would consider healthy blood pressure is just where we took, here's where the population is, here's kind of pathology, so let's be here. Not necessarily that 120/80 is good, right? It's like, from like if you think of like BMI, right?
Yeah.
It's not that like BMI that 25 is good. It's just like not overweight, which is, like being not hypertensive is not necessarily good. It's just not hypertensive.
Right.
And so there was an editorial that went along with this new paper, and in it they were talking about that and really how we didn't start appreciating how early negative cardiovascular effects start taking effect until the Korean War, when unfortunately they had all these young people dying, but then they were able to look at their arteries.
Right.
And they were like, all these young, healthy, soldiers had all this atherosclerosis that had started. And so long story short, this new paper from the MESA study is really suggesting that 100 is more of the healthy level for systolic blood pressure.
Oh, wow.
And that beyond 100, you start getting stepwise increases in risk of cardiovascular disease.
No kidding.
Right? Which is like, how many people do you know that have a blood pressure of 100? Like
My mother.
0. Yeah, I think my mother too, actually. And she's always been told she's hypotensive. And
seriously, she has been too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think that if you look at then all these, so for me, it was just a couple interesting questions. So like my blood pressure is like, my systolic blood pressure is like 110, 114, which I would generally have considered good. And now I'm like, maybe it's not so good. And so then I'm thinking all the levers that you can pull to lower blood pressure, exercise being one of them, from an ability to, the not Bill Hartman version, pump blood, more blood per stroke, right? Also create more elastic vasculature would be kind of the other piece.
Sure.
And then there kind of some different nutrition things. But I think unfortunately exercise is like complicated to study because you start dealing with population, intensity, duration, mode, all those different variables. And then all of a sudden it's like, how could you even figure something out to say, here's a good prescriptive approach?
The sequence of events that resulted in that, okay, is not what the surgery addresses. It addresses the structure and nothing else.
Right.
And then we have to rely on the rehabilitative process after the fact. We're not just reconditioning people in these post-surgical scenarios, right?
Right.
We have to, recapture their ability to manage themselves in space. And if you don't do that, then whatever was causing the problem in the first place can still be there. Because we did a few tricks with her, and her IR turned into 10 degrees of tibial IR after we messed around with it. Yeah, right, exactly. And it's like, okay, so she's changeable. So what's the limiting factor? So we're going to see her next week, and we're going to spend a couple hours with her actually next week. So I might have something really cool to report on the next call. At least I hope to do, because I'm fascinated by this one.
Yeah.
These are the people that you really, really, really want to help a lot.
Right. Like she's been trying to get help for years and years and years and can't.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about this too, after you actually get to evaluate.
What interventions? I'm curious. What interventions did you use to
try
to restore? You had her what?
I had her cough.
You had her exhale?
No, I had her cough.
That is
what do you mean by that?
Hartman intervention. Just cough for me for a second. Okay.
So yes, actually, no. So I have them in a certain position, and then when they coughed, a couple of cool things happen. And what it does is it reduces some of the positional constraints, and then it restores some motion where I need it, right? And I got a bunch of tricks like that. And that's what I would consider them. I consider them tricks. It's sort of like creating a window of opportunity. So, it's like sometimes you can do a manip and now you've got motion where you didn't have motion before, and now you can access that, and then they can teach you something. So I had like 10 minutes to look at this person.
Mhm.
And so I had to do something really fast and dirty, and so I do a little trick, and then but it did like instantly restore a lot of motion where I didn't think I was going to get any, and so then right away like the light bulb goes off. So, okay, we got something that we can work with here.
Actually, that brings up a pretty decent question, and I think it's been floated around, but just considerations for kids when they come back. You know, I think most of us have our answers and stuff, but you know, what are things that I guess that maybe I'm not thinking about in terms of just returning back to training and kind of getting things back into order. I mean, because we're starting to see some, which is crazy in the South, where I think we've seen a couple already, where you know kids are back with their certified coaches, and you know I think one I saw on Twitterverse they threw him through a Murph workout, and this was a football team. I think I saw a death already in Georgia. You know, it's like one of these things where I think we're having the discussion and a lot more people are aware, but we still have coaches out there that are just, you know, they're trying to make their point and they're trying to put them through things where they shouldn't be going through. So,
You know what I would do is I would just have a game. In all seriousness, I would just 2 weeks of play. You know, nothing terribly structured. Pick sides, pick a game, play some ultimate, throw the football around, shoot the basketball. I mean, seriously, I would just get them used to being, you know, in an interactive environment. Like I said, a little bit of structure, but mostly just fun before you try to get too structured and organized. Because everybody thinks that this time, that they're under a time constraint, and if they don't push it hard and fast now, they're going to just destroy, or they're going to fail. And the reality is, it's like, we got time, you know, and they're kids. So let's not forget that part. Does she have access to movement at each segment under any circumstance? So non-weight bearing, take gravity out of the equation.
Yeah.
Can she recapture those things, right? I don't think I would be training her in a weight bearing situation yet. Okay.
Okay.
Can she walk in a pool? So that reduces gravity. That might actually help her restore some of her segmental movement with her foot on the ground, as it were, at the bottom of the pool, right? So you unweight her and see how that goes. So that gives her an opportunity to start moving segmentally, right? You make sure that she can restore those things, and then you make sure that she can restore her ability to turn. But your chessboard is gonna, the tell of your chessboard is gonna say, where is she not turning, right? Where does she not have it? And then that's where you got to go. But if it's too painful to do through her hips, do it through her thorax, because maybe you can drive it down from the thorax. That's the nice thing about the thorax and the pelvis being the same, is that because they both behave the same in most circumstances, right, of performance, so walking, such like that, you can utilize those influences to help you capture motion elsewhere.